Hello, Kimono Nights, and Daily Log people. Hello. It's been like 5 days or something like that. So, did a couple of vlogs in a row and then I fell apart. So start in the middle of the week, get it regained. Well, before I continue on my tangent, hello everybody. Hello, Daily Loggers. Rainbows might come out here for another one. Here on a Wednesday night, here at about 11:30. So you guys know the drill. Project 176 is still a go. Don't worry. So I think we have less than like 163. 162 after today. We still don't worry. We still have enough room and time to do these. So I always seem to kind of nod off on these, but you guys know it's always been a little weird around here. So but yeah, guys, hello and welcome back to another one of these. Just wanted to jump right back since I lay like half an hour and I don't have to play with 50 seconds left in the day. I thought I always do a story. Usually takes about half an hour, maybe 25 minutes. So I wanted to tell you guys, I usually tell you guys an automotive story or something, and usually I go off on a tangent, and I usually have fun talking about some automotive thing that's super cool or really, really interesting. So hopefully you guys stay put right there. You guys don't go anywhere. You guys don't slide down. So hello everyone, and welcome to a racing story time. Usually I don't do too many of these. I was thinking of this the last couple of days, how to put it together. You guys know how it takes me forever to put stuff together and stuff like that. And yes, I will try when I'm finished with this. I'm going to try to record a Pokemon episode. No guarantees or anything. I might record. I'm going to try to record a bit of a disclaimer intro to the Pokemon Lost Johto stories. Lost Johto stories. So I thought I'd do that since I don't want to get a copyright strike every 5 seconds. Even though my Pokemon Lost Johto stories is based on Heart Gold, Soul Silver, I still have to do a little disclaimer. So I'm going to do it at the beginning of the video and then tag it in, and then obviously put it out and do whatever. So but yeah, so Pokemon videos are going to be coming out. Pokemon Lost Johto stories are going to be coming out. I'm currently in Acura City, if you guys don't forget, if you guys don't remember. I'm going to be doing a little training and stuff like that. So the next couple episodes will be me training for the gym and such. So yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing, pretty much. So pretty much. So so I wanted to talk to you guys about the story that has been probably been going in, and I'm saying it because it's kind of it's kind of symbolizes the year for a couple of things. One, the Acura GTP program is getting paused. It's not getting canceled, but it's getting paused for right now. And it kind of brings me back to how long we kind of been doing this whole Acura Honda HPD thing. So for those of you who don't know, Honda Acura sort of go hand in hand. So when they do certain things, they've had the Acura, they've had things like the Acura Integra, the Honda Integra, or the Honda NSX, or the Acura NSX, because and stuff like that, because we couldn't justify having a $75,000 or $60,000 Honda being sold in the United States, so we had to call it an Acura and stuff like that. So Acuras were always high-end, little high-end cars for the most bit, and they were always had the best technology. Classic case in point, if you guys want to buy a Honda Integra, a regular Honda Integra, it's going to cost you anywhere between 35 and like $40,000 or something like that. Because yeah, a Honda's going to cost like, I think an Acura Integra costs around 50,000. I think the Integra Type S costs around 60 something. Well, the Honda Integra, the regular Integra, is supposed to cost around 25 to 30 because it's supposed to. You get what I'm saying. So Honda, so let's put it this way. So the Honda SI is supposed to be the Acura Integra, just a regular Integra with about 200 horsepower. And then the Type S and then the Type R Hondas are supposed to be 45 to like 50,000 plus because it's a luxury car. And most Acuras, I know a few people that have owned Acuras, or I've known managers / people that have owned them and stuff like that. They're always high brand, high performance cars. For those of you who grew up during the Need for Speed Underground era, you guys will remember the RSX, the Integra, and stuff like that. These were, little front-wheel drive, high-performance cars, and the RSX is well known because I'm pretty sure if you guys played Gran Turismo 5 and 6, GT5 Prologue and GT5, you guys will know that's one of the first cars you could technically buy, and so on and so forth. So on and so forth. So there is a brand. So there is kind of a flip-flop between the brands. One's more expensive than the other, even though there's some overlap. But I digress. So a lot of people are like, Acura. So Acura and Acura / Honda in Imsa competition. So before I start with the modern Acura, a lot of people who are old enough to know Imsa way back in like the mid to late 80s when the NSX came out, because the NSX came out around the late 80s, early 90s ish, and 89, 90 ish with a 3-liter engine. It was supposed to have a 2.7, and then it got vetoed to have a 3.0. And then it got vetoed to have a 3.0 and stuff like that. And I know that there's a whole thing where the NSX has done Super GT and stuff like that. That's another story for another time. The NSX R GT that dominated Super GT for a number of years, and and such. Although now it's the Honda Prelude now because the NSX exited production a long time ago. But the roots for Acura / Honda's involvement in motorsports goes way back, all the way to the early Datsun days. With not Datsun, wrong brand. Datsun is Nissan. So Acura's kind of first foray was kind of like early touring cars and stuff like that, and then eventually back in the mid to late 80s we had a thing called Camel Light or GTP Light or Camel GT Lights or whatnot in Imsa. It was sort of like LMP2 back in those days, versus GTP was like GTP / LMP1 in back in the 80s. And in the GT Light division, they had an Acura NSX bodied on a Spice chassis, and it had a 3-liter V6 at about It had about 300 and it had about 4 to 450 horsepower because they weren't meant to be high RPMs. And then those ran for a couple of years, and then Acura just kind of just dumped off the map for a little bit. And I don't think it was like until the early 2000s that we started to kind of get the Acura RSX, and then we got the TLX that would race in Speed World Challenge or GT America, or the GT America Challenge, or the Fanatec GT America Challenge Series, or whatever they want to call it now. You know, I like Speed World in Speed GT, a Speed World GT Challenge, a lot better. So, and you know, Briggs, not Walter Cunningham, but not Briggs Cunningham, but it was Neil Cunningham. Forget. It was something Cunningham. Somebody will probably just my memory, but Acura had a whole thing, and they had the all-wheel drive, and you know that's back when Audi was doing that. And a lot of people were like, "Well, there's not really a space for anything," and a lot of people were like, "Well, why doesn't Acura / Honda come back into racing?" Because and a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, well." A lot of people were like, "Yeah, we'll do that. Maybe somebody with the maybe with a Honda V6 will power that." And a lot of people were like, "Well, Acura, Honda competes over in Super GT with the NSX RGT with the 3.5 liter V8." Now that car first started out with a 3 liter V6, and then eventually. So a lot of people are like, well, they can do that type of GT prototype racing, which Super GT technically is. If you guys ever seen a Super GT car, it's basically a GT prototype. It's not even based on anything, because all of them have 2 liter turbos and stuff like that. It's like NASCAR, but way more high tech, and such. So, so a lot of people are like, well, why don't we do that? Well, why don't we take we have an IndyCar program, and we also have a lineage of prototypes with the NSX Spice car. I think Parker Johnstone, I believe, used to run. Parker Johnstone, who was kind of prolific in kind of GTP light cars and GT light Camel Lights cars, as they used to call them GTP light and Camel Lights, because they were supposed to. That was kind of a big thing, because tobacco back in the 70s and 80s. Imsa even kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference, because Imsa was kind of known for dealing with drugs, not cigarettes, but marijuana. Because you guys gotta remember, just a fun fact, the biggest joke going back in the 70s and 80s was the IMSA stood for not International Motorsports Association. A lot of people call it the International Marijuana Smugglers Association, because everybody and their brother, like Randy Lanier, the Whittington brothers, John Paul Jr. and John Paul Sr. A lot of those guys kind of used the wacky tobacco to fund their racing programs, because none of them, especially the Whittington brothers, who had no money whatsoever, they got the Colombian magical leaf in one saying. So, but that's a story for another time. I'll talk about the Whittington brothers, Randy Lanier, and the drug smuggling that kind of proliferated in the 80s. Although IMSA is kind of clean now, sort of. At least I don't think they have any drug problems. I could be wrong, but I think every sports association kind of has its thing. I'm looking at you, baseball, with the steroids. Yeah, with the steroids. with the steroids. But yeah, that's also another story for another time. I'm not going to talk about baseball. So a lot of people are like, okay, so we have so we have a prototype GT, we have an IndyCar program. Why don't we just bring them all together and make a prototype? So back in like 2004, 2005, Honda HPD Performance and Worth Engineering were looking for a car to do that, and they Honda Performance / Worth Engineering settled on the Courage LC75 and set about transforming two of them into Acura ARX 01As for the 2007 season. And these cars were kind of thought of in 2006, although they were kind of late to the party in developing. These cars were kind of developed relatively fast, but they were methodically put through. So what they decided to do was they decided to figure, since they had the prototype GT style stuff and the racing and such, because at the time and it made sense, since most of the Honda engines that were decent at the time were 3.5 liters, although they would have to conform to LMP2 rules, which would be 3.4 liters and 3.4 liters and such. And I think this was done over 2005, 2006, and then eventually it was done, because at this point they needed something different in LMP2, because Lola was doing a lot of work. AER was doing a lot of work with the MGs and stuff like that. And then, of course, in 2005, you had the 2005 and 06, you had the arrival of the Penske Porsches, and everybody was getting sick of those cars winning by 06. So everybody was like, well, so what Acura decided to do was take these two LC75 chassis cars, redo the bodywork a little bit, do some finagling, and they got a bunch of teams to run them. They got Andretti Green to run one car. They got Highcroft Racing to run another one, and they got Highcroft Racing, Andretti Green, and Andretti Green was actually kind of the IndyCar connection for this program, because a lot of the drivers like Dario Franchitti, Scott Dixon, and Scott Sharp were kind of in on this. There was a third car, which was a Lola, which had an Acura, but that was driven by Luis Diaz and Adrian Fernandez to understand the other competition and to understand how other LMP2 cars kind of were. So, and the Highcroft car was driven by Stefan Johansson, David Brabham, and Scott Sharp. David Brabham of Sports Car Legendary with Jack Brabham and Gary Brabham, all sports car stalwarts, all guys that could drive sports cars, who could drive them fast, especially Jeff Brabham, who was with rival car for Nissan in the mid to late 80s with the Electromotive ZXT Turbo Nissan and a bunch of their prototypes over in Europe. And Scott Sharp, obviously, and his father and all of his stuff, because he was in Indy, because he was involved in the Indy Racing League and kart and stuff like that, because he did actually race. Because he actually did race for a minor team. Scott Sharp raced for a minor team, and Bob Sharp obviously ran the Datsuns back in the Imsa days, back in Imsa / the SCCA days with the 240, the 280, and then the 300, of course, and stuff like that. So, so you had a bunch of people that actually knew how to drive cars fast, and you guys know how to drive Formula cars, because Scott Sharp knew how to drive an Indy car very fast, and David Brabham had won plenty of races, including that one that was in the Jag that was stolen from him for a catalytic converter, of course. And he was also a Formula One test driver, and he had the blood of a two-time world champion in his DNA, and also many IMSA stuff. And Gary Brabham, his other brother, kind of did well in sports car racing over in the U.S. So I think it was big that they kind of put those together. And of course, Adrian Fernandez and Luis Diaz were obviously sports car, and Adrian Fernandez was obviously from IndyCar, so he could deal high downforce, highly sprung cars. And the engine they chose was an AR7 3.5 liter, normally aspirated V8. And the program they went on, and it's actually documented on Speed Channel as the race, the race to the race to the start finish line. And if you guys have watched both documentaries for the Acura, programs, you guys will know that the one they did in 07, and then the one they did in 09, and then the one they did in 08, when they were trying to compete for the, they would always do testing, and they would always do a 12-hour simulation of the 12 hours of Sebring and such. And early on, they were up against some pretty stiff competition. They had the Intersport Lola, they had another Courage from Europe, a couple more Courages from Europe. Obviously the Penske Porsches, what can I say? In their first season, I remember watching the Grand Prix at Lime Rock, and I remember them being very competitive, although Penske did win that first year in 07. A lot of races in that year. I think Acura got away with one, and then it was kind of around 08 where they really kind of came about, and they really started winning races. They won Long Beach, and they won at Lime Rock after a surprise victory. I remember seeing that with my own eyes, actually. I think I've done a story about the 2008 Lime Rock Northeast Grand Prix, so I've done that one. That was a great race. A lot of saving and stuff like that. And I remember just how cool these cars were. And at the time, a lot of people really liked Acuras. After that, a lot of people were buying Acuras because the cars were winning, and a lot of people were happy because Porsche wasn't winning too much anymore. Even though in 08 the Penske Porsches did win the Constructors and Drivers Championship because of a couple of late race crashes and stuff like that. And then 09 would be another year where they would go to the ARX 02A. They would not get to an ABC. I think by the time, and I remember in 07 they did the by the way, 2008 Gilles de Ferran joined the crew, joined the whole thing. Simon Pagenaud and Gilles de Ferran with de Ferran Motorsports joined in 08, and Gilles de Ferran put up some very high ones, and I think Adrian Fernandez with Los Fernandez ended up switching to an Acura ARX 01B as well. The 01C would not be contesting till the following year, but I'll get into the ARX 02A, which was kind of a one-off project and was kind of weird, and it was supposed to rival, this was the car that was supposed to look up this thing. It's the weirdest looking thing on the planet Earth, and a few people say it probably shouldn't have existed, but it did because they needed to step up to LMP1, but they wanted to use the existing engine and I remember seeing the chase to the start, or the LMP1 project or whatnot. It was a Speed Channel. It was right before the 12 hours of Sebring, and I remember watching that, and I remember saying, "Oh, this should be interesting." And the development work on the ARX-02A was pretty interesting. So the concept, so from the LMP2 car, which would be run by Fernandez in 2009 to go up against Dyson Racing's Mazda Lola, which would ultimately win the champion, which the Acuras would ultimately win the LMP2 championship. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. So the idea was, well, at the time when the cars were, because remember at the same time in 07, 08, 09, the diesels were becoming were prominent. Peugeot, Audi had a diesel. And there wasn't a lot of competitors for those cars over here in the States. So what Acura decided to do was use a normally aspirated engine, and they decided to take the 3.4 AR7 V8, and they called it and then they upgraded it to 4. They boarded out 4-point liters called the AR7LM V8. It made somewhere around 620, 630 horsepower, and the torque was around 270, 290 foot-pounds. It was kind of a top-end engine, and it kind of suffered from not being turbocharged, which I think a couple of Acuras at the time were. So, and to be honest, I think they could have, since they had a turbo engine around that time in one of their cars, I think they could have actually done it, but Honda didn't want to deal with that, and and of course the turbo Indy cars were over 3-4 years away, so they went with a 4-liter AR7 LM engine, which produced around 625 to 630 horsepower. Probably one of the weakest LMP1 engines. Actually, I think it made around 340. I think it made around 310, 340 foot-pounds of torque. I can't remember. But it was a really weak engine, and they were like, okay, so it doesn't have a heck of a lot of power, doesn't have a heck of a lot of torque, but we can use downforce and grip. And that would have been cool had the regulations not changed from 2007, 08, and 08, because in 2007 LMP1s were allowed to run full width rear wings. In 2008 they were allowed to run full width rear wings towards the end of the bodywork. In 09 they were required to move them inward, I think past the rear wheels. They couldn't pass almost in line with the end of the rear wheels on there. The end plates came out to here on the Peugeot and the Audi, and then they getting squashed. See any of the photos from like 09? From like 09, I can't see any. I can't really show you guys any photos because just look them up. Just look up 09 LMP1 specs. You'll see the rear wing. 2008 to 2009, you'll see the wings go from like this to this, and that combined with some of the underfloor changes that they were making. So Acura decided with the shortfall in torque around 340 foot-pounds, as I said, weak engine, slightly more than what the ARX was making, what the AR7 Imsa engine was making, but still very weak. So what they decided to do was they took the rear wheels, size, and they put them on the front. You heard correctly. They took the rear wheels and they made all 4 wheels the same size. The front wheels were the same size as the rear wheels, and it helped on certain circuits where they were able to grip. So places like Lime Rock and Mosport and Long Beach, these cars were able to really grip and do a lot of do a lot of damage on tight circuits. So at like Sebring, they were able to really hold their own somewhat with the diesels until the hydraulic steering decided to go a little bit. I remember at Lime Rock because I was there. I remember at Lime Rock they handled pretty well. They handled pretty well, very good to watch them. But they just weren't. They just weren't really fast. And when they did actually go to during the sprint races, they were amazing. At the endurance races like Sebring and the Petit Le Mans, they didn't do so well because of the hydraulic steering. I think because of the sprint race format, they were able to do a little bit better. So races less than 6 hours. Well, 6 hours they were was Petit Le Mans? No, was Road Atlanta. Yeah, so I think Road America was 4 hours, and I think Laguna Seca was 4 hours. So any race less than 6 hours was usually beneficial for them, and they seem to do a little bit better. Anything beyond 10 or 12, they really didn't do so well. And Acura was like, yeah, we're gonna ditch this. So, and it opened up the floodgates for the next year, 2010, when the ARX 01C came back for their season, and their friends, the Porsche RS Spider, would also come back in 2010. Obviously, with less horsepower and more weight, but it'd be run by Musselman Pickett Racing, and then there would also be there'd be Musselman Pickett Racing. There would be Jason Barwell with their Lola Jet, and in some rounds they would have the Aston Martin. They would have the Aston Martin V12 of Aston Martin Racing, and Adrian Fernandez, I believe, was driving that car and stuff like that. So they would run certain events, and Dyson Racing, because the LMP class was combined when they weren't running with the World Endurance Championship or the Le Mans guys and stuff like that. They'd have different classes and stuff like that. Acura did very, very well during that year. I remember them winning the championship. I remember halfway through when they went to Le Mans, they actually went to the skinny rear wing. And they didn't do too well after that. The Lime Rock, they struggled, and then they sort of regained their composure and stuff like that, but they were never really able to give it their all. And then I think I remember like a couple of rounds after they were allowed to use their full body kit. So remember the ARX 01C had the same rear wing for a while as the 02A, which I forgot to mention had a horrible top speed deficit, especially on longer circuits. So at circuits like Mosport and Utah's Miller Motorsports Park, their top speed was very lacking. In fact, I remember watching the Mosport round in 09, and I remember John Fields' Lola ended up hitting 191 in 2010. Obviously, the next year he would contest the same class, but he wouldn't be as fast. So, the ARX 01C ended up contesting in. They ended up winning the championship. I think it was over. 2011, Acura did come back, but it was only for like one race, Sebring, and it was the ARX 01 ELMP1. because of the new regulations. The newer regulations in 2011 only around 3.5 liter V8s, which gave it around 525 horsepower. And of course, the earthquake in Japan in 2011 nixed any of the funding. But a new chapter would begin now. So earlier in 2011, a team called Level 5 Motorsports had a Lola with a turbo 2.8 liter production based engine in the back of the Lola LMP2, and that car contested. That car would contest Sebring and a couple other rounds, and then towards the end of the season in 2011, they would come up with the ARX 01G, and the ARX 01G would be the precursor for the ARX 03A and the ARX 03D, which was kind of the LMP2 version, 2.8 liter, and then this would be 2012 would give birth to the 03A, which would obviously be the. And if you want to speak about cars dominating, that 01A by Muscle Milk Racing, the same guys that did the Acura, that did the same guys that would do the. Oh yeah, that's right. 2011, we would have the battle with. We'd have the battle between obviously Aston Martin with their Muscle Milk with the Aston Martin and Mazda with their stuff, and they figured it wasn't viable, so they picked up the Acura. When it then became, back in 2011, Acura became HPD, and then all the cars were HPD 01, 03, 03A, and then the 03G and stuff like that. And that would kind of be the, actually I think it was the 03B, not the 03G. 03G was the, the 01G was the one from 2011, sorry. So the dominance between 2012 and 2013 would kind of see the peak and kind of the peak of the Acura program for quite some time, because we wouldn't see an Acura program till Penske brought the ARX 05A over to Imsa. Obviously in 2017 when the DPI program came about, but that's another story for another day. I want to only concentrate on the Acura story between like 07 and 13. So 2012, you had, so 2012 and 2013, you had a all-star combination of Klaus Graf and Lucas Lohr, and 2012 was also Klaus Graf and Lucas Lohr, and these two were like Klaus Graf and Lucas Lohr, basically no prototypes, really good with racing. Both of them had prototype experience. Lucas Lohr had run the Penske cars, and Klaus Graf had obviously run Pinos and the Aston Martin Lola back in 2012. He did a bunch of stuff for Trans Am and stuff like that. So Klaus Graf was a really, really, really good one. I didn't mention him in the 2010 year because I wanted to kind of save him for this one. But I remember every single race. I remember Mazda would like win one or two, but it would be Mazda won one or two, and I think Rebellion with their Toyota would win one or two races. So I remember them winning Sebring in the points. I remember them winning I remember them winning at Sebring over everybody, and then obviously Laguna Seca, and that would happen both years with the Rebellion Racing. But other than that, every time these two cars, every time the Mazda Lola and that HPD AR3A, there was no C version. C version was for like 2013, 2012, and over in Europe and stuff like that with the WEC. Now with the WEC in full swing. But just one word, dominance, with the 2013, 2012, 2013. And I got to see some actually pretty good drives. As I said, this was kind of the peak of Acura's early program before we got the GTB cars, the DPI cars with Roger Penske and obviously Mike Shank with the GTB cars, and Wade Taylor Racing with the GTB cars, obviously. So the GTB cars, obviously, with before she switched to Cadillac. But as I said, I'm going to talk about that 2017, 2023, some other one. One of the most highlight moments, though, of the whole program of HPD / Acura, though, was, I forget if it was 12 or 13, but I remember Lucas Lorton starting the car. He gets going, then he gets into an accident. He has trouble, and then they had to go into the garage, fix the car up. Car's like 3-4 laps down, and I remember they got Klaus Graf back in the car for like the last hour, or like the last hour and a half. They kept them in the car for the last hour because the accident I think happened about 45 to 50 minutes in. So they put him in. So they had Lucas Lohr come out of the car, and they had Klaus Graf climb in, and he drove the absolute wheels off that car. He ended up closing a 4-lap deficit in a 2 hour and 45 minute mall. 2 hour, was it 2 hours? Yeah, 240. This is back when it was 2 hours and 45 minutes. Not 2 hours and 40 like it is now, but 160 minutes, you know. But I just watched him drive the absolute wheels off that machine, and he ended up putting it on the podium and winning overall that day. It was probably one of the best drives ever, and it was kind of like was it 2012 or was it 2013? I think it was 2013. It was kind of a cap on that because the next year, Muscle Milk would get a Zytec Janetta, and they wouldn't do good after that, and I think they ended up shutting their doors. They ended up shutting their doors. Team Cyto Sport / Team Muscle Milk ended up shutting in 2014, 2015. It was a shame. Not to say that back in those days we also had Scott Tucker. If you guys know the name. You guys know he's in jail because he was a racketeering / Ponzi scheme guy. So he kind of used that to fund his HPD race cars. So I remember, while the Acura, HPD, Muscle Milk is dominating with this. Here goes. Didn't I say that? Well, didn't I say that that Imsa was always an interesting one? There was always some scheme. I didn't know if it was clean or not, but yeah, this is back when we were doing laundry scheming and stuff like that. Imsa should have been called the International Money. The International Money. I can't say it. I can't say it. It's kind of it's funny, but it's really not. But International Money Laundering. It should be the MLA, International Money Laundering Association. So Scott Tucker ended up winning with the ARX-03A, and then I think in 2014 they also competed in the beginning of the WeatherTech series, and eventually the Acura program eventually kind of just died. The HPD kind of died after the 2015, 2016. Although I think Mike Shank kind of carried the HPD engine in the Ligier that they had in 2015, 2016. So 2016 to fight the DPIs, but the Daytona prototype. So, and I remember Mike Shank doing kind of good with the Honda engines / HPD engines. But then we wouldn't see anything big until 2017 when Acura would return in the 2017, 2018 when Acura would return in with Penske Racing, obviously the captain. But it's a story for another time because I've already been here, I think, for 40 plus minutes. So that was a recap of me talking about the Honda HPD story. Sorry it took a million years to me to get that out, but I wanted to kind of deliver you guys an episode, just not 10 minutes, me saying, oh, hi, this is my night, my week's going good, bye. So I wanted to give you guys a story night. So it's not a gear change show, but it's just an automotive kind of fact. So but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Feel free to leave a comment on stuff I missed in the story, but I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll see you guys for a video from later tonight, since it's already Thursday. Later tonight, maybe around 8, 9 o'clock. So I will see you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to start making these again, and I will be making Pokemon videos. They will be coming possibly Saturday or Sunday. So just give me a chance, and I will bring those out to you. Good day, and everybody. I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Good night. And get ready for an episode of me just talking regular again tomorrow. So peace out. Peace out, goes. This ends the entry for today. Peace out.